Doylestown. We may know it today as just a place to call home, but before our time, it was just a simple town founded on principles and pride. Doylestown High School had stood as a prominent symbol and a beacon of groundbreaking architecture and technology for her time. Not only was she invested in having a beautiful campus, but the best was sought for the educators that roamed her halls. Prior to the building of the high school, Doylestown did have a small schoolhouse called the Union Academy. The academy was built in 1804, and in its 85 years of educating, it had seen over 4,000 students, male and female, pass through its doors. In 1886, it was discussed amongst the Board of Trustees that the Union Academy became too small for the amount of students attending and a larger school would be necessary. The deed was transferred to the Doylestown Borough, and in March of 1889, plans were drawn for the new school building, the future Doylestown High School. On May 3, 1889, a small ceremony was held where many of the highest esteemed citizens and former students prepared speeches of hope and enlightenment for the future of the school and her students. The Union Academy's bell rang one final time, and the town's citizens said their goodbyes as the building was soon demolished. Milton Bean, a renowned architect from Lansdale, was tasked with the important mission of designing a school fit for Doylestown. Bean had made mention that he wanted to design the finest school building the state of Pennsylvania has ever seen. The original plans have the grand building sketched with 3 stories and surmounted by a belfry. All the stones used in the creation were brought in from Bucks County or neighboring counties. The 1890s were just beginning to peak out of the modest Victorian era. The economy was starting to change in the name of progress, and this said progress demanded change in a big way. With any new buildings that would be built in a small, close-knit community, it must be met with the approval by the citizens and pass through their judgment. Throughout the building process, there were plenty of obstacles that held up many of the progress, such as vandalism on the building throughout the night by the local boys, the townsfolk writing in constant complaints of the cost being too high and the fashion too luxurious, and the inclement weather that halted the building for many days at a time. On April 1, 1890, the school bell rang for the very first time, signaling the completion of the town's most recent project, and on April 9th, the first day of classes began. "22 years after the high school was built, there was a huge increase in students attending. Doylestown itself was growing in size, and in 1912 the first edition was completed with the annex. World War I brought a huge impact on the local town just as it did on our country. The system of education had changed, and things like patriotism sessions were required, and curricula all over the nation had changed to teach anti-German sentiments, propaganda, pro-war lessons, and nationalism to the youth to remain loyal to the United States. In particular, this was the age of Margaret Mead's attendance, where as the editor of the Torch, she wrote many articles supporting the cause. We also see other supportive words being written during this time of need, especially directed towards the high school men who would more than likely be joining the war after graduation. Although the first club at Doylestown High School was the Literary Society, which was founded in 1914, it wasn't until the early 20s when after-school activities started to become more of a trend sweeping throughout the nation. In the 1920s throughout the 40s, we start to see more organized clubs forming to whatever the era defined as being important, such as Harlequin clubs, movie appreciation clubs, archery clubs, cheerleading, and traffic safety clubs, and much more. These help to exercise a student's creativity. Not only were clubs becoming popular, but the curriculum was rather different than what a modern school would offer, such as classes on becoming a salesman, farming classes, rifle classes, and nursing. It wasn't until 1935 when the high school saw a graduating class of over 100 students, and this demanded that there needed to be a larger expansion to make way for the heavy incline of students coming in. There was also a lot of discouragement in the safety of the current school, as the annex that was only built 23 years prior was already falling apart from poor craftsmanship. It was an idea that an investment in land needed to be made. The remaining land around Doylestown High School was not enough to keep expanding, and the cost to repair the age of the building was too much. In fact, a new building would have to be made. So in 1936, 12 acres of land were purchased and a new school was envisioned. The cost of the new building was calculated to be $356,000, which would take years to raise. During World War II, Doylestown was hit hard. Many students and educators felt a patriotic duty and would supply in any way they could. Some staff went off to war. The students struggled to graduate so they could help overseas, and there was a decline in attendance. Many alumni were drafted and the town felt the loss of presence. Keeping in mind the era, many things had changed. There were more female sports being in the spotlight while the men's team struggled with attendance. Curricular activities such as archery and golf became hobbies to appease the young women at school, and the decline of males attending classes took a toll as they were required to take their father's place at home. After the end of the war, the attendance had picked up, and it wasn't until 1947 when the raising of funds for the new school was underway again. And in 1950, the new school was under construction. In 1953, the building named Central Bucks High School was opened for the very first time, with plenty of space for the students of the future. It housed many of the prior town's pupils and many more from new surrounding towns. Because this was a new school entirely, the old traditions of Doylestown High School were not kept. There's a new mascot, a new yearbook, school colors, and rings. It was at this time we could say the past and history of Doylestown High School came to an end and the torch was put out. She served nearly 80 years in the community, but was no longer needed for her intended purpose. The old building was converted for storage and community meetings until her final demise in 1973, as her walls held flames. This devastation left no further remains, and the building only left memories to those who once roamed her ancient halls.
I think in my graduating class of about 100 in high school, only 3 or 4 of us went on to college. So they certainly weren't teaching us for college. They were teaching us for something more solid. And had I never gone to college, I think I would have still had a very strong start. I might have been able to do something quite substantial.
Where'd you go to high school? Doylestown. Well, how come? Why didn't you go to Blooming Glen? You had the choice. When it came to high school, you had the choice of picking your school, because all the school board did in Bedminster was pay your tuition. You had to provide your own transportation. So if in Bedminster, the butcher's boy and my brother and I, we decided on Doylestown. So what?
Where did you go to school here?
Doylestown High School.
And you rode to high school in Dick's car?
Yes, that's how there was no bus service from.
But because my mother graduated from Doylestown High School, of course, her girls had to go to Doylestown High School no matter what. So I did get a ride with a man who worked in the courthouse, which was great because I was on the rifle team, and there's a picture of us on the rifle team. We practiced down at the armory.
Doylestown Public School, erected AD 1889, and it's in far better shape than when I found it in the closet, Judge.